Yitro, he's heard everything. He's come running. He's come to Megayer to become part of Klal Yisrael. He's brought Zipporah and Moshe's children, and he's trying to reconnect them, bring them back together again, and he's trying to become part of Klal Yisrael. And he's heard all the stories, all the Maisim, and this is not the same Moshe Rabbeinu he said goodbye to some time ago, but he knew that Moshe was unique because of what happened to him while he was still living in Yisro's house. But now, after all that he's heard and seen, so now he came out to Klal Yisrael, to the Jewish people, and he heard all the Maisim, the stories, all that Kosh Baruch Hu did for Moshe Rabbeinu, the Jewish people. It says, V'yichad Yisro al kol tova, Yisro rejoiced. The word V'yichad here is an unusual word. Rashi explains it to, the pasuk, the translation usually is that he rejoiced. There's lots of other words to say they rejoiced in the word V'yichad. How many times you use this in conversation, or even throughout Tanakh. And as a result of that, the Gemara darshans out that different pshatim, one of which is that he had chadudim, meaning that when he heard the stories of what happened to Parah, Mitzrayim, even Amalek, and Kriyas Yamsuf, that he got goosebumps all over his body, but not because he felt positive, but because he was disturbed by the entire event. And the Gemara says from this, you learn that even for 10 generations after a person converts, we shouldn't make fun of the people that he came from, or from the Gentile world, because it takes a while for a person to transition from one to the other, even though the person, intellectually he wants to become part of Klal Yisrael, but not so pashut. Emotionally, it takes a while to get used to being part of the Klal Yisrael. So that's what the Gemara darshans out, that basically Yisro had some kind of still connection, kesher. He was a man of the world. As Rashi points out, he tried all the various different avodah before he finally turned to Kosh Baruch Hu and Torah and mitzvahs. So that's one pshat. But the other pshat is not one that Rashi brings down, but one that actually can learn out from the fact that the Sefer Torah itself doesn't have any nikudot. So very often, because it doesn't have nikudot, the word can be read differently. And because it can be read differently, often it opens up to other drashim at different levels. So you can actually read the word v'yachad, which basically means that Yisro unified. Right? V'yachad Yisro unified al kol tova, on all the good that Hashem did to Bnei Israel and they saved them from the hand of Mitzrayim. So what's v'yachad? Well, Yichud, obviously, is a very important inyan in this week's Parsha, because, again, as Rashi points out, it mentions that the V'yichad Tachat Ahar, the Jewish people camped at the base of the mountain very shortly, and Rashi brings down the famous vort, that they got to the level of Ishach HaBalevuchad, because it should say V'yichanu, they camped, but it says he camped. So the question is, why does it mention in a singular? Because it was a phenomenal miracle, given the Jewish people, 2 Jews and 3 opinions, and 4 Jews and 10 shuls, and all these different jokes we have about ourselves. But it was a singular moment in history when the Jewish people were able to unify to such an extent that it became like a single individual with a single heart. Very, very unique circumstance because of Kabbalah Satorah, because of the magnitude of the miracle and the event taking place. It transformed them. And we had to know, at least at one time in history, that the Jewish people were objective. At least one time. And when was that one time? That was by Har Sinai. So we at least know that the Torah that was received was the one that was given in the end. What happens after that? You see 2 Jews, 3 opinions, and different, kehilas, and different minhagim and all that. But the essential Torah was the actual Sefer Torah that Kosh Baruch Hu gave to Klal Yisrael. So Yichud and Achdus is extremely important in this week's Parsha for the sake of the veracity of Torah and more than that. And that's what's going on with Yisro, because over here, this little piece, it's a very deep idea, and he goes in for, that's what the Gemara says. This is a classic Gemara. It says, Adam roitze b'kav shalo mitesha kavim shochavero. A person, the psychology in life is that a person would prefer 1 kav of his own as opposed to 9 kavim of his friend. It's not a quantity thing, it's a quality thing. That really you get more pleasure from just $1 of your own than taking $9 from your friend. Even though it's $9, it's $8 more than what you have. Because the one is yours, there's some special connection to it that gives you more pleasure in life than the quantity aspect coming from somebody else. That's what the Gemara says, and I never quite understood what that Gemara meant. I didn't relate to it. I always thought the $9 was better. But he explains why. So he says, that is because ובפרט כאשר שנעשה גם כל עצם מציאת הטוב הגופה בפולסיו כוחסיו. He said, and this idea is even more relevant in terms of his actions. That we like to do good things and produce good results. That's what makes our life meaningful. Even if we feel tired and we're lazy and we don't want to get involved, but the reality is, people always feel better after doing good. It's the most important cure for depression. Depression works against this. People who get depressed don't feel like doing anything positive. But people who are depressed, who do things positive, will eventually work themselves out of a depression if it's not chemical imbalance. But even in a situation like that, because that's the nature of human beings. When we work positively to do positive things, by definition, we will feel better about life in general. And he says that's the main hana, and explains why does it work that way. This is a very interesting point. He says, "Kol zeh hu b'sibas shorsh ha'achdus shebekol echad ki kulam nasuim rak al shorsh ha'achdus." And all this has to do because everything is rooted in achdus. Everything in creation, which makes perfect sense, but everything in creation is rooted in unity. The ultimate unity, of course, is the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So we all come from Him. Everything emanates out from the Kodesh Baruch Hu's light. So by definition, built into everything in my Bereshis is this quality of unity and desire to unification. Automatically, whether you like it or not. So it says, Shu Panimis Hakol, that's what's inside everything. Buhu Noises Kulam, it carries the whole world. So that's why a person prefers himself in the end over the rest of the world. Notice like he like what belongs to him. Uma shuhu shalo hu chavivlo, right? Nikol, right? Whatever belongs to a person, he will ultimately want that more than anything else in the world. So, taken to an extreme and abused is the concept of greed. People are greedy. People can be greedy, right? The whole crash of 2009, they say, was greed driven. People were totally irresponsible about their investments because it was just a question of making more money and more money and more money that eventually caused the crash. But where does that drive for, where does that greed come from? Where does that drive for greed come from? That people want to take so much for themselves. So he says, because a person is more driven towards what belongs to him. He wants for himself. Because there's a certain unification. Kihu. Because the person is one with it. The person, by definition, will have a desire much more for that which is unified with him, which is unique to him. Because that's what carries him for the most part. The gam shebe'emes harei miyachad shorsh achdus is kol hanifradim gam kein ki kulam nusuim rak alav v'lo nasu from elav rak al yedei masachim. Is the next point, but the idea he's saying over here is that really that's what's driving all of creation, whether you can see that or not, which is very hard to see because the world seems to be in the exact opposite mode. The amount of hatred and killing and hafrada in my separations would suggest that they're built into the exact opposite of the achdus. So he explains that until Mashiach comes, the achdus takes place at a panimistic level. The world is actually unifying, coming together on a spiritual level, the physical aspect of which will only become recognizable in Yemos Mashiach onward. The final stage of Tikkun is actually, in fact, the three stages of Tikkun. The first stage of Tikkun is called Seder Tikkun Klaus, the order of the Tikkun of inclusion, of everything become unified. That happens on a panimistic level. The next level is called Tikkun Sod Klilus. The tikkun of the mystery of inclusion, that's the Yemos Mashiach, when physically the world will begin to unify. And the final stage of tikkun, which takes place way, way down the road in Olam Haba, the later stages of Olam Haba, is called tikkun sod achdus, which is literally the tikkun of the sod of the mystery of all of achdus, when all of creation becomes unified to an extent that there's no real individuality anymore as we understand it. Somehow we maintain some aspect of individuality to make possible our enjoying the world to come for all the mitzvahs we've done in this world. But the world would not look anything like it looks today, where people are separate one from the other. Even before the chet, when Adam was made from light, it says that man will become basar echad with his wife. So before the chet, we got the skin, it was possible even physically to do that. Today, it only happens, as Rashi points out, to the children genetically. But that's the driving force of creation, of all of creation, not just, me and you and the world around us, but also the table and the walls and everything in Ma'aseh Bereshis wants to go back to become unified once again and no longer separate. So he says that today, since the chet of Adam Rishon, and after that the chet of the Egel Zahav, that unification only takes place through mesachim v'mechitzos, through mass and through external as a result of externalities. Shehu mechomrius va'avius shehu besibas zohamash odeyachet al panim esam heim yichadim la'olam. Right, that unfortunately, because of the chet of Adam Rishon, we can't achieve the level of achdus we want to be able to achieve. That's the root of two Jews and three opinions. We'd like to be unified. We'd like to have one shul, one opinion. But unfortunately, the bodies we have, the types we have, the guidance we have, cause separation. But on a panimistic level, that we are all unified. We are all one. And we'll go back to being that way once again, as we saw by Har Sinai. It's certainly possible. So it says that in the meantime, all that's nicker, all that's recognizable, is a yichud, is a yoter atzum, lechein hu tshuka adam tamid l'shalo, ki hu matzmo el atzmo asher yichud, v'zehu nicker gematar. So it says that's the basic idea of why a person prefers his own. We are driven towards ourselves. We are driven towards our own property. We care about it more than the world around us. We may have a mitzvah to care about other people and other things and to do it, but we're naturally inclined to care more about ourselves and our own interests not just because we're greedy, because the driving force of all creation is unity, and the easiest unity and the most atzum unity we're able to achieve at this time is with that which belongs to us, that which we create as a result of our own ma'asim tovim, and that which we're able to achieve as a result of simply, what we accomplish in this world. So that type of unity, is singular, right? This is what goes on in my own personal life. This is what goes on in your own personal life. We have no connection, except perhaps to get together once in a while and share a concept. But there are moments in history where the situation will be so overwhelming that the unity on the panimistic level will actually begin to appear on the external level as well. That's what happened by Har Sinai, and that's what happened to Yisro. The other pshat in the Gemara of what of Yichad, Yisro means from the word Chad. The whole question is what's the root of the word. So one root is the one shorish. One opinion is the root is the word Chad, which means sharp. Because at that moment in time, Yisro literally, when he heard the stories, he fell upon himself. It's the lashon, he fell upon himself. He took a sharp rock, if you can imagine this, and he did bris milah immediately on the spot on himself. A kosher bris milah using a sharp stone. That's the word yichad, from the word chad, a sharp stone in the head. Right? So we're talking about extremely elevated spiritual perspective. When was the last time you felt like doing things like that? Right? No matter how exciting Shabbos might possibly be, and v'chulu, thank God we over here bris milah anyhow, but you're not driven to get to a point, to work, on the Yemin Arayim. For me to get to a level of spiritual connection to Kodesh Baruch Hu takes a lot of work. The day helps. Yom Kippur, perhaps the fasting helps. But I'm not automatically driven towards it. The first few hours of just waking up from sleep in the morning, the rest of the day I'm working hard on myself to push everything aside and get rid of all the extraneous thoughts so I can just focus on Hashem. But Yisro had no problem, because the experience and the information and what he heard, the Yachad Yisro, immediately he unified. Unified himself, unified with the Jewish people, unified with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, unified with the world, and the result was, I cannot wait to join. I cannot wait to be part of this people, and immediately did bris milah.